So I made a video very recently talking about this issue with Pal World and Nintendo ninjas taking down websites and even people. I mentioned Ryujinx as being a Switch emulator that is still up and running. Obviously, that particular point aged like milk, as Nintendo sent an ultimatum to the developer of that emulator, and they proceeded to fold up shop. YouTube is doing what it do and talking about Nintendo being the evil empire. It's funny how these evil empires tend to be the most successful empires. Whether it's Nintendo, Apple, Tesla, the New York Yankees, I suppose there's something to the saying, behind every fortune there's a crime. There's also something to the saying, if you don't have haters, you don't have success. There's a situation of a channel under the name of Retro Gaming Corp nearly getting death struck by Nintendo. 3 strikes and you're out, and this channel is on strike 2. YouTube is in a rage with people saying how they'll never buy anything from Nintendo, something these people haven't done since the Nintendo 64. Nintendo has survived nearly 3 decades without these people's money. Not only have they survived, they've gotten stronger. It's what happens when you don't ride on your old audience and you're able to bring in a new audience. This person's channel and other retro gaming as well as emulation focused channels can still produce content on emulation and retro gaming. They just can't use anything from Nintendo. Some have said Nintendo is giving up free advertising for their content. I don't think Nintendo is unaware of this concept, and they obviously feel they don't need it. They want to be in complete control over the distribution of their content, and honestly, I don't see a problem with this. They have Splatoon and Mario Kart tournaments, and even had a Smash tournament during COVID hosted on their YouTube page with announcers and everything. A major reason Apple's so successful and profitable is everything is in-house. They make their own chips, they have their own app store, and they have their own product ecosystem. If you want to talk about Nintendo copying someone, it would be Apple. Having to go to their YouTube page, Twitter page, or whatever page for Nintendo-based content brings more engagement and revenue to Nintendo. Again, they're not stopping Retro Game Force from posting retro gaming content. They can continue on without Nintendo doing anything to them as long as they don't deal with Nintendo content. Nintendo's not trying to end emulation unless you emulate their games. I suppose people have a problem with needing to go to Nintendo's official channels for Nintendo content. Both sides are justified in their feelings on the matter, and it will be up to Nintendo to figure out if this hurts their brand or not. Truthfully, the numbers say it doesn't. A comment I see often is, maybe Nintendo should put less effort into litigation and more effort into making new games. YouTube's heart was all aflutter about Nintendo's June Direct, saying it was arguably the greatest Nintendo game showcase ever. We got Echoes of Wisdom, Mario and Luigi Brothership, Mario Party Jamboree, and we finally got a glimpse of Metroid Prime 4. The internet also blew its load all over itself over a collection of 25-year-old games in the Capcom Fighting Collection. The internet agreed Nintendo succeeded in bringing out both exciting new titles as well as bringing back some well sought after classics. These same people making these comments will talk about how Sony and Microsoft should bring back this or that classic game series. They cheered Sony on for bringing back the Lunar series. Fans want the old style of Zelda, then constantly nag about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD remake ports to the Switch. I'm gonna need these people to make up their minds and fall back on the phony outrage. The topic of game preservation continues to come up. I again go back to Vim's Lair. It's still up. The only thing Nintendo did was take down the games they actually sell. Tears of the Kingdom was pirated days before its release, and Yuzu was taken down. Echoes of Wisdom was also pirated, and with Yuzu being gone and Ryujinx being the only Switch emulator around, Nintendo had them shut down to plug up all the holes. Nintendo wants to eliminate all possible avenues for people to pirate their games. If Echoes of Wisdom doesn't get hit in the same way Tears of the Kingdom did, by piracy, Nintendo leaves Ryujinx alone. Some will tell you it's impossible for Nintendo or anybody to stop games from being pirated, and they're correct. I said this already in another video on the topic. Nintendo knows it's not possible to stop people from emulating and even pirating their games. This is not Nintendo's goal. Their goal is to relegate piracy and emulation to being a niche activity and to take away any easy avenues to do it. They don't want it to become mainstream. The average gaming consumer either doesn't know about emulation or thinks it's too much of a hassle to get into it. This is where Nintendo wants emulation to be, and you accomplish this not by taking away the internet's ability to do it, but by getting rid of any major channels for it. Some have brought up how you can still get downloads of Ryujinx and Yuzu if you really want them and know where to look. But there's now a huge risk involved in doing so with malware. This effectively accomplishes what Nintendo desires in discouraging the average gamer from doing emulation. Nintendo again got what they wanted. You then have those saying Nintendo should make hardware which can run their games better if they don't want people using emulation or going to piracy. I've talked about this already in my video about the Steam Deck competing with the Switch. Battery life is paramount. You can emulate Nintendo games on the Steam Deck in 4K 60 frames per second, but for how long? 2 or 3 hours tops of gameplay is simply not good enough. It's a major reason why the original Game Boy trampled the much more powerful Game Gear and Atari Lynx. Yes, Nintendo games run better on PC, but it's easy to run games better on a platform where battery life isn't a consideration. You can find videos of people overclocking their Switches, running Tears of the Kingdom at 60 frames per second. It can be done, but at what cost? Battery life is the highest priority when dealing with handheld gaming devices. Having the highest fidelity in the world won't matter if you can only play for an hour. So then why don't they give you the option to play at higher fidelity if you want it, people will say. Because you will then moan and groan about battery life. The resolution and frame rate patrol are the niche hardcore gaming community. The average gamer doesn't care about this as long as the game is fun and has an appealing art style. The demand for retro games and legacy titles from Nintendo should tell you that. Better to sacrifice in an area most people don't care about than sacrifice in an area everyone will care about. There's obviously much talk about Nintendo's patent filing against Pocket Pair. There are those saying the gaming industry is doomed if Nintendo wins. This is simply a false, emotionally driven boiler take. It's red meat for the Nintendo hate mob. You cannot, I repeat, cannot patent broad video game concepts. The only thing which will be doomed if Nintendo wins this suit is Pocket Pair, and only Pocket Pair. There will be no ripple effects if Nintendo wins. Why? Because the only way for any of these patents to have a chance in court is if these patents cover an extremely specific function in a game. People need to stop bringing up Doom clones. The makers of Doom could not patent first-person shooting even if they wanted to. They cannot sue Nintendo over Metroid Prime. Despite what the boiler take YouTubers are telling you, Nintendo both cannot and is not patenting throwing a ball. None of these people reporting on this are reading the actual language in these patents. Either they're skipping it purposely or they don't have the information. If Nintendo truly is trying to patent throwing a ball in a video game, then the gaming community can rest easy because Nintendo has no chance of winning. Same thing for the mounting patent. No one is reading to you what these patents are saying. They're showing you a picture and then going on about how evil Nintendo is. These people aspire to be game journalists or are trying to inform the people. They're doing a terrible job. Why is Nintendo doing all this? My educated guess is they are preparing the consumer landscape for what the Switch is going to do, as well as what they plan to add to NSO. If they're planning backwards compatibility for their new system and will add DS, 3DS, and Wii games to NSO, they don't want people having unauthorized access to these platforms. Again, Nintendo wants complete control over the distribution of their products. People saying, Nintendo will destroy your life if you do anything wrong with their stuff. I don't get this line of thinking. Are we saying people can't help but pirate their games? Does everyone own a MIG Switch? Are we saying Nintendo can't expect anyone to buy their game and not want to post it on the internet? Apparently, this is Nintendo asking too much. Anyone in the comments can feel free to explain this line of thinking to me so I can understand it. All the doomer takes on what Nintendo is doing right now are wrong. All of them. Emulation will continue on. You just can't do it for Nintendo games. Game development will continue on. Just don't copy Nintendo's licensed stuff. I'm confident content creators and game developers can move forward without taking ideas or using material from Nintendo. Nintendo may be the biggest player in gaming, but they're not the only player. You don't need any of Nintendo's ideas to make great games and great content. If you want to really stick it to Nintendo, show them you don't need them to be awesome.